Welcome back to our restoration project. Today we're going to take on the gauges. Okay, so getting started here, just taking a brief overview of our gauges opened up and laid out here on the bench. We're going to go through each of these one at a time and kind of go through the disassembly process and reconditioning process, and then what we would do if there's a problem with one of them. First problem we're going to run into is going to be our clock over here. Let's go ahead and break that one down. I can tell you a little bit more about it as I have disassembled it as far as I can go. Looking at our clock here, so I've taken this apart basically as far as I can. I've actually had this rear housing off, but we can't remove the faceplate and needles out of there by doing it ourselves. What's happening is this center nut assembly and needles are actually riveted on here, and quite substantially so. There's no way we can pry this off with any kind of tooling or anything we can do DIY-wise. So I'm going to send it in. I talked to North Hollywood Speedometer, told him our dilemma, and he agreed to help us out with this. It's not really the type of work they do. It's really preferred you send this in. They can go through the whole thing themselves, serves it properly. That way it's put back together properly, and they can warranty it. But in this case, they've made an exception. They're willing to help us out here for the restoration. So what's going to happen? I'm going to send this whole gauge in up to this point. I'm going to keep the trim ring here, the glass lens, the other trim. I'm going to repaint here. And what they're going to do is they're going to take it apart for me. They're going to send back the center plate so I can repaint the matching finish what we're going to use on the rest of the gauges, and then we're going to re-zinc this housing. You can see it's pretty corroded there. So I'm going to do that work and then send it back to them, and then they're going to tune up the needles and re-put it back together with their tooling and jig, and make sure the whole function of the clock works properly. And then for all the bezels, if you can get them off without damaging them, because they are brass and really thin metal, if you can get them off there safely and without any damage, they can be re-chromed. Sent these to Advanced Plating in Tennessee, did a real nice job re-chroming these in, so we're going to be very careful putting these back in place. All right, and then for our trim rings here, I'm reconditioning these. I'm stripping the old paint off with acetone and a rag. I'm not using any kind of sandblasting or paint stripper chemicals on there, and no wire brushes, just a rag and acetone. It's a very thin paint anyway, so it comes off no problem. And then the back side of the, this would be the bezel that sits down against the face of the gauge. And the reason they painted the side white was to reflect light back onto the face of the gauge when you turn your dash lights on. So what happens over time is they turn yellow, oxidize, and then you don't get that reflective ability anymore, which means that your dash lights are going to be really, really dim. Not be able to see what's going on very well. So what we're doing on all the gauges, we're taking all this paint off. We're repainting the backside of these bezels bright silver. Also, some of the housings are painted white on the inside. The ones that were painted white, I've gone ahead and repainted bright silver over the top so we can get a nice light reflection in there, nice and bright. Hopefully should brighten up our gauges when we turn our dash lights on. So first thing we'll need to do is drop some kind of a release agent down the center of the shaft here. It's either cemented on or pressed on really tight, or just stuck on there from years of being really dry. I'm sticking a shim underneath it very gently and taking some kind of a tool to get under it and leverage it back off, working it this way, pressing from underneath, and then working it all around so that I'm not bending or over torquing the shaft here. We don't want to bend this shaft in any way. But that'll get it off of there. And then looking at the cap that presses down over the top of this needle. So I pried that off first. Inside was filled with like a putty type adhesive pressed down over the top. You can pop that out first, and then you can gain access to this pilot hole here. Dribble a little KB88 down there, and that should help loosen it up. Okay, that's off of there. Looking at the inside of our inner workings here, very cool to look at. Visually, I've looked it over really close. I don't see anything wrong with any of the inner workings or any of the teeth on any of the gears. The only issue I really found was all our gears were just really dried out and packed with just almost like a wax type grease. It is so dried out over the years. everything would have just been seized. So no way this thing would have worked. All right, that takes that out. And then this gear will come out of here. Next, we'll take off the magnet retainer. And then we can pull out our magnet. And this has a couple of shims in here. We don't want to lose those. And then on this side, we have a ball bearing plug that'll be pressed out by pushing our shaft this way. And then this will press out through this side. And then this one here, this is about as far as we can take this one. We'll just re-lubricate everything when we put it back together, re-grease it. And so this is basically some kind of housing that works with the spinning magnet and will turn that spring on the other side, the spring right here, and that's what moves the needle. Pretty wild setup. Amazing technology. Faceplate, we're going to have to get all this apart, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to take a Dremel and work this rivet here, kind of in a bevel there, very gently, until it just cuts through and releases that rivet from the front side. Once that falls out of there, then we can get all these pieces apart. Okay, that's definitely tough, but doable. Let's lift that guy out of there. It's actually like a male-female type rivet. Okay, there we go. All right, now we can tune all these up, get them all painted up, and put back together. The acetone, you can see, just gently removes our paint. Doesn't do any harm to our metal surface underneath. Acetone strip looks real nice, ready for paint there. And our inner rings turned out real nice, except I got a little bit of rust residue in some of the crevices there. So I'm just gonna work this over with some 1000 grit and tune that up a little bit. Then she should be ready for paint. And then some acetone and a soft paintbrush to remove the old paint off our needle. All right, I think we're ready for some fresh paint. So the next thing we need to attempt to do here is we need to try to fill in these numbers here that have faded and a little bit broken up here. See, we're missing some paint out of there. So what we're gonna do, using some Testors white model paint, that's gonna be our color. And then I'm gonna use a larger syringe to withdraw the paint from the bottle there, and then I'm going to fill it in our smaller container here. This is going to be the smallest needle in the set, and I think that should be small enough to get us through the project here. And then what the process is just basically to lay it down in the trough there and just bleed the paint in there until it kind of self-levels out. Haven't done this before, going to give it a try. Not sure how it's going to work. Let me go ahead and move the camera out of the way. I'm going to need to get in really close with this. Also, I'm going to need to use a jeweler's light and magnifying glass so I can see up close, really close there. But let me see if this works, and then we can take a look at the result. Okay, we got our paint in the end there. You can see it bleeding out the end. Okay, let's see if we can show you how to do one of these. And then if we have just a little bit of bleed over, we can use a razor blade. So that takes care of that one. About 6 hours to get through this unit complete. Very happy with the result. Nothing too difficult about it. Just got to be real patient with it, go slow, and make sure you have the right setup. But definitely doable. The one thing I needed to do was reset everything back to zero. So I hooked a drill up to the side of this shaft here and spun it in reverse for quite some time to get everything to line up, but eventually you'll get there. So we got everything reset back to zero. We just need to lubricate this and start putting it back together. A petroleum grease on our gear set here, right behind this gear here, this gear over here. And then I'm using a regular 30 weight engine oil in between here and this shaft, and also down this shaft. And then I'm going to use a 3-in-1 regular petroleum based oil, not synthetic oil, right underneath this bushing in here. Very, very small. We're going to use a syringe to get underneath that and just put 1 drop in there. Okay, this unit's ready to go. Let's finish painting up a few more pieces and we'll start putting it together. And then for our silver trim, we're using a duplicolor chrome. Flows out real nice, and doing the back side first, then flipping it over, and then putting the black on the front side. So our first coat is just a brush coat of primer, and the reason we're brushing that out as opposed to spraying it out, primer is really a thick build type of a paint, and so if we just spray it out, it'd be very coarse, very rough, and would affect our finished coat on top of it. So if we just brush out a real thin coat of primer and then knock it down with some 1000 grit very gently, we'll be able to have a nice base there. But when we put our final spray out on top of it, it'll opaque out quickly and you won't have too much weight onto the needle. And for the final spray out on all our needles, I'm using this Krylon Max, and the reason I like this is the spray out on the tip, a real fine spray out, almost like an airbrush type finish, so works really nice with small parts. Okay, 3 coats on that, drying between each coat. That seemed to turn out real nice. All right, so we just received back our dismantled clock assembly from North Hollywood Speedometer. Let's take a close-up look at those parts and see what's needed to restore them. So looking at our housing here, it's actually in very sound condition. It's just cosmetically, it looks pretty bad. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna just strip all this old finish off of here, re-zinc plate, and sand it back. All right, and then looking at our clock face here, it looks to be in real nice condition, just a little bit dirty. So what I'm using to restore all our gauge faces is a pure carnauba mother's wax and a really soft microfiber rag. I'm polishing up and buffing this area here. I'm not really sure what this finish is. It's not really a paint. It's almost like they use a silk screening process to put this on here. But whatever it is, whatever that coating is, it responds really well to the carnauba cleaner wax. And it doesn't come off on the rag, so we're not removing any kind of finish when we're doing that. Also, flip it over on the back side here. You can see paint really yellowing there, and then our edge here, all the paint flaking off. So this right here, this is why we're getting dim lights on the dashboard. What we're gonna do, we're gonna sand all that up, repaint this up in a bright silver, wax her up, polish her up, and should be good to go. So our chrome looks to be in real nice condition. So what I'll do with this, I'll just polish it up with some chrome polish and then put a coat of wax on top. And our needles, so that's how they come apart, and we'll get those all painted up, sent back to them. And then last, we need to paint up our centerpiece. So what we're gonna do, go ahead and get all this stuff tuned up, repainted, refinished, put back in a box, and sent back off to them. Okay guys, so I think we're at a real good stopping point here for part 1. So as you can see, the restoration process, pretty much the same for all the gauges. The only thing that would be different is basically just the mechanics inside the gauge. So you can see we've got everything stacked up here ready to go on round 2 of our gauge rebuild here. So on our next video, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take each gauge one at a time and go through the complete reassembly process, any kind of lubrication that would take place, and explain the mechanics of that gauge as we're putting it back together. So hopefully by the time we get through that one, you have a real good understanding of your gauges and what needs to happen to get them restored. Well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on part 2.